reason that you don't remember a lot of your childhood and where these things are coming from. And in that session, without her, manipulating or anything, I was just silent. And all of a sudden, trauma memories from, I think, about 6 years old started to surface. And it just gave such a key and reassurance of like, my whole life, I've literally thought I was broken. And I left one counseling session where the lady was like, here's the diagnostic statistical book, and I'm going to tell you all the things that are wrong with you. And I left literally believing I am crazy. And so to now know, oh, there's an actual root to that. And from that root, then the infrastructure of how my inner world developed and matured to try to kind of quarantine that pain or that virus, metaphorically, if we think of a computer, then now I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to help others. Because I know for a fact that I've worked really hard on all the mental health things. I've done all the right spiritual things. I've done all the, and until I had something that could synthesize and put it together, I was so floundering in life. I couldn't get my career, my relationship, every area was just underperforming. And so think of it like your inner world is fragmented. And what I've done is taken the 20 years of studying psychology since to create the Restoring-Self-Cohesion method. So that took me from California, and then I went to Virginia for grad school. I went to Hawaii for internship, and then back to Dallas for my residency, and then started my practice. March will be 12 years that I've been owning my own business, Crawford Clinics, where we do mental health reimagined.
I love that. And what's crazy is this word root. And like you keep saying it over, not over and over, but it's a part of what you're talking about. And I remember in 2017, I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to a prayer meeting, and they were talking about this root. I had a root of, what was it? Just being bitter. Like I had a bitter root, and that I needed to work through that. And so when you kind of talk about just some of the things about self-cohesion, it reminds me of just the journey that I've gone through. And I didn't even know kind of maybe what it was. And you're going to help me understand a little bit of that today. So let's kind of just go into it a little bit. We see how you kind of started out and got into being a psychologist. So let's really define what it is, like RSC. What is the self-cohesion approach?
Right. So it's psychodynamic and theoretical orientation, which just means lots of years of research. And so then now it used to be self-cohesion. And so now the goal is to actually restore our cohesion of the self. So a lot of times, in society, we look at things like, oh, there's a problem, we need to solve that. So right now we have the mental health crisis. And so everybody's throwing solutions. And I would say what we need is actually a larger framework to understand how the inner world is designed. We have a body, a soul, and a spirit. And just like your body, it has 78 organs. It has 12 different systems that all are separate and have to work together. 100 billion neurons, all of those independent and yet having to interface. If they don't do that properly, that's an autoimmune condition. So just like how when our body starts turning against itself, we now get symptoms. Like you could get mental fog, you could get weight gain, you could get hair loss, you could get skin issues and be like going to 12 different doctors chasing symptoms and not realize, oh, you might have hypothyroidism. You might have an autoimmune condition. You might have an underlying misalignment in one of your systems where they're not interfacing properly. So how much more complex are psychological makeup? So physical realm is everything in the natural, tangible you can look at. Metaphysical just means everything that's intangible and yet we know has life force energy to it. And so when I'm talking about the metaphysical realm, we're talking about the soul and the spirit. So if you have a body, a soul, and a spirit, and the three come together, those three have to learn how to collaborate and interface. If at any point one of those gets in misalignment, we get symptoms. So then we go to the medical doctor, we go to the psychologist, we go to the spiritual doctor or the pastor or somebody. Each time we're not recognizing, oh, there's an actual misalignment in how those three independently are working and then how they're interfacing with each other. So my goal is to take the broad field of mental health and create a very systematic approach to here is what was originally designed for your inner world to look like. And let me just define terms. Your soul is your mind, will, and emotions that are part of your human understanding that help you relate with this world. So, to do your checklist, to figure out what your bank account is, how to take your kids, have a cognitive map of driving them to school, whatever your inner world has to function in a day to day. Think of it like a manager. And if it was a corporation, then your CEO or your C suite level is your spirit. So you have a spirit man. All I mean by that is like your true self, the vibrant
Right.
you, multifaceted, brilliant you, that when you step into that part of you, you're like, I can start a business. Of course I can write that book. Are you kidding me? Of course this podcast is mine. I own this industry, whatever. Right? Like your spirit is confident. If you've ever had that moment when you're driving in a car and you like put your hand out the window and that feeling of like sublime peace, it is well, that's like you're in your spirit. Or sometimes you're in the shower and all of a sudden ideas will come into your mind. That's your spirit.
All the
Yeah,
time.
that's your spirit. Your soul is managing. When you ruminate and you're constantly working the problem, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're still anxiously thinking about something, that's your soul. They're not good or bad, they're just different. And when they're not in right
Yeah.
alignment, now we have a misalignment producing a symptom. And instead of whack-a-moling our symptoms, we need to do a deep dive and figure out what inside caused my soul to step out of trust, to hijack my inner world, take over control. And now I have a manager instead of my C suite or my executive level leading. So when you're like, okay, I have vision for this business, and then the bills come in or the critiques come, and then the soul goes, oh my gosh, and steps in front. But it's so instantaneous, we don't know it's happening. And they're all parts of us, right? And all
Right.
sides of me are valid. So I still feel like it's me. I don't realize I've literally stepped out of alignment. So think of it like your brain. You have a central nervous system. You have a brain that goes into your brain stem, and then that goes into the spinal cord. So in order for a signal to go from your brain to your fingers, it has to travel through that spinal cord, and there's all the vertebrae. Let's say one of
Right.
those vertebrae get out of alignment. There's a misalignment and it pinches that nerve, or you have a severed nerve. You literally will lose the capacity for these fingers to properly function. So in mental health right now, with everybody saying there's a crisis for mental health, they're chasing solutions for the fingers. How do I get rid of my depression? How do I fix my anxiety? How do I make the suicide thoughts go away? How do I do this? As if they're isolated events. And now I'm not
Right.
minimizing the importance of pursuing solution, but I'm saying if we as a culture don't learn how to step back and say it's much deeper, more complex and beautiful, that actually you're not broken. And any part of you that's
Yeah.
feeling anxious, feeling depressed, feeling suicidal, we would do an internal board meeting. And then for time's sake, I can't go into all of that. But on my website, you can find e-courses, podcasts. We have tons of resources. And then Crawford Clinics, all of our therapists are trained in restoring self-cohesion. So we actually help you not only reduce the symptoms, but restore right alignment so your inner world continues to function. And the benefit that we've seen is a lot of our clients will actually start to become more creative, more entrepreneurial, more brave, because you're re-accessing parts of yourself that have been having to like hold these roles and assignments from old things of our past, like what my inner world was doing. And the healthier I get in my alignment internally, I've noticed my spirit man leading in areas I would have backed out in fear and talked myself out of it, feeling incompetent. And now I'm like moving forward, not perfectly, obviously, but I can see
Right.
that momentum is there when my spirit is leading. And so that's where society needs to learn it's much deeper than just symptom reduction, but it's actually optimizing our inner world for performance.
I mean, that just blows my mind. I really do think that society as a whole, they always are just saying, look at the
Mhm.
symptom, treat the symptom versus the whole person. Um, and so I am starting to see folks kind of, going to different doctors that, functional medicine and things like that are going to look at the entire person. I mean, it's just, I love it. I think it's just fantastic. So, let's kind of bring that into how do you weave this approach into maybe you're working with the
Mhm.
leaders, the business owners, high performers, peak performers. If I were a client of yours, how would you approach me?
With gladness. So let's say, so it depends on if it's a therapy side or executive coaching. So I work with leaders and influencers to have healthy souls to optimize their performance, not on the external, but on the internal. How do I go beyond the
Right.
grind and go into the
Mm-hmm.
grace of it flows out of me, out of the abundance of my heart, my mouth speaks. And there's a capacity, a bravery, and a boldness to make decisive, clear decisions. In order to do that, then normally people start with a pain point. So somebody would say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm, let's say, not being decisive at work. I'm being double minded or ambivalent, and it's hard to like execute or do the thing I need to do, let's say. So then we would say,
Right.
okay, let's do an internal board meeting, which just means I have many parts of me. I'm not saying multiple personality disorder, everybody jumps to that. But the fact that multiple personality could exist, which is dissociative identity disorder, by the way, the fact that that can exist means that we have the capacity that we are already multifaceted. Just like I explained the
Right.
78 organs and the 12 systems, we have separate parts. Just like if somebody was going between mom mode and sexy mode, we probably want different sides of us showing up to those events. You can have like driver business, and then you can have like nurture your child. Like we want different
Yes.
sides of us showing up. But the problem is the harmony is disrupted when any part of us hijacks the committee and then becomes always perfectionistic, always in control, always, or always timid, always backing down, always. And so what you'll see is like in indecisiveness, somebody's inner committee is going, well, I should do this. No, but that bad thing could happen. Well, I have a dream for this, but then rejection could happen. Oh, no, we're not going to risk that. So think of it as
Right.
parts of self, not actually a different personality structure, just different sides of me that are in misalignment and disharmony. In that state, now I would teach my client because my goal is for me to be obsolete in my client's life. I want to equip people to know how to steward their inner world to optimally perform, restore alignment. And then every once in a while, they may come back for, maintenance sessions when there's a misalignment they can't get past. But ultimately, my goal is for my clients to soar and then report back, 10 months later going, I'm a badass. You're not believing what's going on in my life right now. And that's the funnest part about my job, is I get those reports all the time of like, I have a capacity I never knew I had. I was living with symptoms and now it's opening up. So let's say
Right.
indecisive, then we would do an internal board meeting and we would honor and validate, hey, part of me that's stuck in the role of being a protector, a manager, of trying to defend or block. I hear you and I see you. Where did you learn that
Mm-hmm.
from? Hey, other part of me that's being muted and silenced, and there's kind of a mutiny against you. You're not
Mm-hmm.
bad. I want to love you and restore you back to your true identity. And then we clear out things that are not inherent to the personality. And that's, next level. We won't go into that conversation, but we're just restructuring and we're teaching the soul to trust. When the soul or the manager level is in a state of trust, it allows and frees up your true self or your spirit to come forward. And then we're decisive, we're clear, we're organized, we start a task and we actually complete it, which does not happen every day when you're in your soul. It
Right.
happens when we're
Yes.
actually leading from our true self.
I love that. And so I know that when we talked, you were mentioning just the
Yeah.
hardware, like our minds are like a hardware. Kind of talk a little bit about that as well, like how that kind of plays into, just restructuring that, or having those downloads that maybe before needed a little bit of restructuring, and looking at it as that, like, I'm not
Yes.
bad. Everything is working together, but how would someone really be able to kind of change a little bit of that
Yeah,
hardware?
absolutely. So obviously each person has a nuance that's different, but at a macro or large level, we would say your hard drive is the unconscious mind. So there's
Mm.
unconscious and there's subconscious and pre-conscious and then conscious. So you don't need to know all that. It just means there's level of processing your brain is doing for you at all times that you don't have to think about. Like right now, our bodies are regulating temperature. They're digesting food. They're
Right.
turning glucose into energy, right? They're doing all these things for you and you don't have to think about it. Thank you, subconscious brain. That's fantastic. Thank you, unconscious brain, that has created automaticity, that creates protection mechanisms and infrastructure. When we're young, everything is, we have predisposition, nature, but we also have the nurture, right? And so everything we're exposed to then gets hardwired in and it becomes part of our automaticity. Just like when you pick up a cell phone and your face, the computer or the cell phone can recognize it, it automatically populates your password for you. Your brain does that far better than a cell phone ever could. So the brain,
It's a really great way of
what's that?
That's a really great way of looking at
Thank you.
that.
Our brain is very brilliant. And I want to restore that belief. A lot of my clients go, oh, my ADHD brain, my broken brain, my anxious brain, I'm so blah, blah. And I'm like, you have a great brain. There's a misalignment,
Yes.
but you're not broken, inherent you, personhood. Your symptoms are
Right.
real, but let's chase the symptoms and resolve a misalignment between body, soul, spirit, rather than keeping a shame narrative that
Mm.
immobilizes growth. So shame, the reason it's bad is because it's an I am statement. Anytime I say I am, my brain hears that as personhood. And your brain works on efficiency. So if my personhood is broken, which is your spirit man, it's a belief that I, as a me, my fundamental core, I am broken. If that's the belief, your brain literally turns off problem solving region of the brain to be creative, to find the solution. Crazy, right? Just by changing the
Yes.
sentence from I am ADHD, I am anxious, I am depressed to I have ADHD symptoms, I have depression symptoms, I have or I'm experiencing panic attacks. When you
Right.
change the language, your brain is actually responding and it will allow for creativity and the exploration, the possibility that there could be a solution. So when we go back to the hard drive part, what your question was,
Right.
at a hard drive level, everything got hardwired in. And here's the interesting
Mm.
thing. Sometimes talk therapy, if not done well, could actually lead to more symptoms and problems in people's lives. Because
Mm.
talk therapy, where you just tell your problem and how this person hurt you and how you're a victim in this story and that event happened and blah, blah, them empathizing is nice. It's nice to get it off your chest, but it's not actually upgrading your hard drive. And in essence, you're actually rehearsing and repeating all the bad things that have happened. So it's strengthening the negative neural pathways or hard drive. And so then now your brain is queued up to continue looking for that at an automaticity level below your conscious
Mm.
awareness. So the
That is
yeah. So the thing we look for is what we find. So it's crazy that you may be doing positive mantras, doing your positive statements, you're doing all this great work and self help, and then bad things keep happening and people keep rejecting you and disappointments and failure. And we don't realize, oh, if I'm not changing the hard drive or the unconscious mind, then I am incompatible. If you think of a computer, your software is like your conscious mind. So you can upgrade the software very easy on your computer. But to actually upgrade the hard drive, it eventually becomes incompatible if you're not syncing up both. And so that's where restoring self cohesion, our goal is to streamline the mental health process by saying, oh, okay, symptom. Thank you for showing us the
Mhm.
symptom. Those are parts of self. And now let's find out at the conscious level and the unconscious level where that actually got wired in. And there's parts of self still playing those old roles. And then there's body work where the body actually holds the energy of trapped emotion, not in a new age way, but in a literal, you have energy that moves through your body, and trapped emotion
Right.
then creates that feedback loop. So we do body, soul, spirit in our sessions with restoring self cohesion so that we're upgrading the hard drive to be compatible with the software. Many of our clients are doing the conscious work. You know, their positive statements, they're working really hard on, manifesting their destiny. And yet life happens and they're back at square one and it's like, oh, this is so frustrating. And I'm like, yeah, because you have an incompatible system. They're not interfacing anymore. And so with the right approach, we can help optimize what you're doing at a conscious level. Now your unconscious mind can support that, and you can go forward with beauty and grace and strength. And that's our courage for the people.
I love that there's a process. And for someone that's struggling with this, which a lot of people are, and you could go through a season where you struggle with it and parts of your life where it's a little bit more. And it's comforting to know that it's a process that you can go through, that you're not stuck there, that if you do take these steps and you are aware of what it is, you can come out of that. I wanted to ask you just a little bit about how you said that that energy is trapped and there's symptoms there. Kind of go into that a little bit. That's very interesting because a lot of people probably don't understand that or would think that of some of the energy that they're holding.
Yeah. And I think, language is so interesting because the first time we hear a word, we associate it with that camp. So a lot of people can be afraid of the word energy because they associate it with like a new age or a weird thing. All it means is our brains are electric and chemical. Okay, so everything that your brain is thinking and doing, it's an electric chemical process. Part of that means there's electricity or energy that moves through your brain. Now, if you think of it from quantum physics and metaphysical realm, what that means is that's that interface between the physical of the organ of your brain interfacing with your soul and your spirit, the metaphysical realm, the energy. And in quantum physics, they call it dark energy and dark matter. So that would be at a scientific level, everything that we can understand, they would compare to a grain of rice compared to everything. They're like, we know there's matter, we know there's energy, but we can't quantify it. We can't, there's no researchable way, but we know that it's like the Chrysler building compared to a grain of rice. The difference between what we can research tangibly, and yet this energy we know that is working in the universe, holding everything together, and the substance of things we can't hold, touch, and quantify. That's just science. That's not a religious, that's literally just science called dark energy and dark matter. So the cool thing is if you take your brain out, because everybody loves to idealize their brain. If you say brain terms, all of a sudden people think you're smart. In reality, the brain is an organ. If you take the brain out of a spirit and a soul, it is literally part of a corpse. It's not self-generating. It's just an organ. So your brain is not broken, but your brain is responding to a million signals coming from the soul and the spirit. Soul, again, is that manager, day-to-day, ruminating, figuring, controlling, analyzing. And then your spirit is that essence of the confident you that knows, here's my life purpose. Here's what I want to do. Here's who I know that I love and I want to be with. That confident assurance, and they're very different, and often they're at odds with each other. Every time we have a thought, there's electric chemical energy that moves through the brain that then moves and sends signals throughout the physical body. In that, when we have a thought that releases hormones and chemicals and emotions, now that energy is in your physical body. And so some things are small and easy and no big deal. And other things I go, oh, I don't want to feel that. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, I don't want to go there. Right. And with legitimate large trauma, we have a built-in firewall that protects us from feeling the intensity of the trauma. Right. So it's shock denial. It's that first stage that, my mom passed away not too long ago. And it was devastating because she's one of my best friends. It's not like, oh, she's just my mom. Like, I love my mom. And for 6 months afterward, I was oddly okay. I was entrepreneurial. I'm teaching at the university. I'm seeing clients. I'm supervising trainees. I am going after it. And I was fine. And I didn't realize that that's that firewall. That's that built-in defense mechanism, coping mechanism that helps us metaphorically run out of a burning building, that we can survive through trauma. But what I didn't know is 6 months later, I started being irritable and everybody was annoying me. And I just wanted to be by myself. I was craving carbs and sugar and caffeine and just leave me alone. I want to watch Netflix, which is very unlike my normal personality. And I just thought everybody's annoying and it's just quantifiable. Everyone else is the problem. And one day a friend was like, let's work on a book project that we're co-authoring. And she said that. And I'm like, no, we're not, no, we're going to do, oh no, she wanted to work on our emotions. She's like, let's talk about our hearts. And I was like, no, we're working on the project. We're getting tasks done, because I didn't realize how much my own defense mechanisms, automaticity,
Right.
outside of my awareness, were saying, no, we don't want to deal with pain. And so when pain tries to surface, usually we defend against it. Like the nerve endings at the end of your hand. If you've ever touched something hot, you never have to think about moving your hand from something hot. Your inner world will automatically go, move hand, right? That's a defense mechanism. It's a protection on that physical realm. We have the same with our soul. I don't want to go to my places of pain. But what that's doing is it's causing mental fatigue, it's causing distractibility, it's causing irritability. Everybody's annoying me. I'm having sleep problems, back problems. My physical body's starting to have symptoms, my health. I'm having weight gain because cortisol from trapped emotion causes stress to the body, which causes abdomen, which is weight gain in your stomach. All of these things were factors in my physical body. At that point, I could go to this doctor, this doctor, this doctor, this doctor. And it wasn't until I realized, oh, I have trapped emotion from latent or unprocessed grief. And it's the grief that needs to be honored, acknowledged, and restore alignment, where my soul learns it's okay, stand down. You don't have to protect me. I can function even as I allow
Yeah.
that trapped energy to release out of my physical body. Because wherever our little firewall comes up, that emotion doesn't get to come out. So then it comes into symptoms. And that's where most people are chasing their symptoms. They're trying to get better focus. They're trying to get better diets. They're trying to get better motivation and mantras and all these things, and not realizing, oh, your system is actually hurting. And if you're not
Yeah.
acknowledging that, you're working against your design instead of working with your design.
Wow. I mean, as a leader, like a coach and in leadership, this is so good to hear and to be able to help the folks that in my
Yeah.
responsibility. So let's kind of look here, kind of in closing, is for the folks that are struggling with this, maybe they have the anxiety, they feel that elephant on their chest. Um, what are some exercises or tricks that they can maybe start utilizing that will help them kind of overcome some of these things?
It's hard to ask a clinical psychologist for a quick tip when like it's so
Or an
nuanced. That's so
exercise.
nuanced. I would say a practical thing anybody could do would be a psychodynamic triangle. So this didn't originate with me, but I did develop it further. So a psychodynamic triangle is where you take what's my current situation at the top of the triangle, and then you draw out a triangle, and on the right side, you write down, what are the current symptoms, thoughts, feelings, emotions? What's coming up for me on the right side? And then, unrelated to the current situation, what are the other times throughout my entire life that I've also felt any of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, reactions, impulse behaviors? And then I go, okay, let's write down and circle the very youngest age. Because our goal is to go back to automaticity, which means that the inception of where that started. Because now we have to go to the hard drive and figure out what part of me is still running in the background, trying to function at the way that I needed at back then. And so now
Right.
below that triangle, I'm going to start writing down, okay, what were the inner vows I made? What were the core beliefs? What were some judgments I made against myself or someone else? How did I learn to defend or protect myself? How did I learn to comfort myself when I was going through that back then? So many people with eating issues, whether it's on the anorexia, over dieting, over exercising side, or if it's on the impulse eating, comfort eating, all of those, it tends to go back to very young and our first imprint with food being comfort or a withholding of comfort. So there's usually something much deeper and more significant. So from there, now I visualize, hey, me at 0 years old in the crib, and mom was trying to do this structured feedings, like Dr. Spock back in the day, who did tons of damage by telling moms not to just pick up their infant and hold them. But that happened. That's a whole generation of people who have eating issues around that unconscious panic that food's going to be taken away and I need it as a source of comfort. Because if you think of breastfeeding, that's our first stage of getting comfort, was being held and held to the breast where we're getting nurturance, or a bottle, but it's still in a sense of comfort being held. And so if I can take somebody back to those steps, or they can do it on their own and say, hey, me that felt really different in school. Hey, me that felt unwanted or invisible as my parents were watching TV or working all the time and not really seeing me. I love you. I see you. And in your imagination, you're picturing peeling an invisible film off that part of you. So we're not just doing like abstract memory. There's a literal part of your soul or your spirit that's still holding that. And so you're bending down and hugging, and now in essence, bringing that part of you back to the conscious committee. Now, that is hard because the soul is designed as a manager to go, oh no, that's the bad part of me. That's the one that causes symptoms. That's the one that causes me to impulse eat or to yell at my kids, or that's the part of me that causes me to overspend or whatever. We have to actually restore cohesion or friendship between the soul learning, oh, this is not a bad part of me. It's a wounded part of me. And once there's healing, now the soul can rest and the spirit can access healing once it's conscious. And now that part of your spirit can lead again. And now you'll notice when you're plugged in to the spirit realm that you actually have the fruit of self-control as part of the fruit of the spirit. So it's this really beautiful progression that we take people through. And obviously each person, it's really different. And I would provide corrective experience, which we don't have time to go into that. But there's just all these beautiful steps to help people go, I'm not broken. And that's the message I want people to hear today is hope, 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 hope. You're not broken, but there are misalignments. And it's not just willpower to make those go away. There is actually an art and a science to it. And that's where I would direct people to the Restoring-Self-Cohesion course. We have many courses on our website. You can go to crawfordclinics.com or drshannoncrawford.com. And Shannon spelled differently. In Gaelic, they differentiate male and female. So Shannon is Shannan.
Okay. Gosh, I mean, I feel like I just had a therapy session for myself, of understanding me. And gosh, it's fantastic. And I love that is something, yes, it's very nuanced and hard to kind of articulate that someone can kind of take away. But even for me in that moment, that's something that I can do. If I find myself in that struggle bus moment, let me sit down, stop what I'm doing, and kind of think about those things, write it down. I mean, I think you have to want to do those things. So let's see here. Okay. So thank you so much. I feel like you gave so much information and in such a way that it's really just understanding that we don't have to deal with our symptoms and that there are resources out there that will look at you as a whole and you're not broken. And I did hear you say that you are working on a book. Is that right?
Oh gosh. On my podcast, I talk about it all the time. And I'm like, guys, I'm living this with you. So I'm working on the Restoring-Self-Cohesion book/workbook. And then I'm most excited about the Restoring Self-Cohesion in allegory fiction. So it's espionage and romance. So it's a psychology book, but told through espionage. So I have 2 different book projects. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. So I'm like, I want to do all the fun things. And then the discipline to sit down by myself and do it doesn't always happen. So yeah.
Well, we look forward. I will be on the lookout for it. So you already said you kind of told the listeners where they can find you as far as your website. And then you have the Unlock You podcast.
Unlock You, like the university, you. With Dr. Shannon Crawford, and we're on all the platforms, YouTube, all the things. And then we have social media and a newsletter to stay up to date with all the things that we're releasing. And we want to do RSC groups. So that'll be something we'll be rolling out.
That is awesome. So they can find you on YouTube, Instagram, and your Instagram handle is just Dr. Shannon Crawford.
Yep.
There you go. Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. And I can't wait to hear your book. And I learned so much from you. It was a pleasure. And
Absolutely. Have a great one.